Hello friends, this is Sarah and welcome back to another Dinkum build. This time we're going to be replicating a section of the Grand Canyon. I had this genius idea and shared it with Sunny and she was like, oh yeah, that'll be really cool. That's who's building with me, Sunny Ann. Hey Sunny. We got about 5 minutes into this project and I realized my patting myself on the back for my genius was perhaps ill-timed and not warranted at all. The amount of dirt printing we had to do, I really should call this video the endless dirt printing sessions instead of the Grand Canyon, because that's what it ended up being. We ended up editing down our original plan to a shorter section and a skinnier section. We were going to make this much longer and wider than it ended up being because it really just took forever. I took about 3 hours of screen recorded footage, and that wasn't even every session, by the way, and reduced it down to about, I think, 10 minutes of dirt printing. It was crazy. It was endless. Dirt printing for days. I would do it in between breaks and meetings and just jump on and dirt print for a day and then jump off and go do something else. In fact, I worked on other projects in between all of this because it got so tedious. It gets a lot more fun once we get to the campground section. But here you see, we're just dirt printing away. So while you get to watch that, how about we do a bit of a story time? I actually went to visit the Grand Canyon incredibly spontaneously. It was not planned. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision, pretty much, when myself and my family of 5 took a road trip out to California back in March of 2011, I believe. My brother and sister-in-law had lived out there for several years, and they wanted us to come see where they had been living because they were actually going to be moving back to Texas later that summer. And we had never been out there, and the kids had never been out there, so we were like, okay, we'll take a quick road trip out to California. Quick being the operative word, it wasn't really quick, but, you know. We live in Texas, on the eastern side of the state, and so a significant portion of our road trip was in the state of Texas. The kids were kind of like, ugh, this is boring. As you drive west through Texas, there's really not a lot to look at. Scenery-wise, it's kind of the same flat nothingness for miles and miles. And when we ended up in Albuquerque that night and stayed the night and got up and drove the next day, we started getting a change of scenery. And I was the navigator, so I decided to kind of look and see where we were going to be passing through and see if there was anything interesting, where to stop for lunch, et cetera, et cetera. And I started noticing that we were going to be really close to the Grand Canyon. And our route took us, you know, kind of through Flagstaff. And it's just a hop, skip, and a jump up to the Grand Canyon from there. And we were talking, and I thought, you know, we're so close. Should we make the detour? You know, when are we ever going to have this opportunity again? You know, we should do it while we're here. So we decided very kind of spur of the moment, last minute, to detour from Flagstaff up to the Grand Canyon. And it was a good decision. I'm really glad we did it because it's one of those things where, you know, it's one of those great wonders you get to see. So we drove up there. It was, I think, an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, kind of out of the way. A beautiful drive. Snow was still on the ground because it was March, and there were all these birch tree forests, and the kids were starting to get really excited. It's like, oh, this is cool. It's something different, you know, did not look like back home. So we got up to the entrance of the park, and you know, hit one of those little kiosks. I don't even know what to call them. And you go through there. I think we had to pay a small fee. And you drive up and the parking lot is right there and the Grand Canyon is right next to it. Like, I was expecting there to be a bit of a walk or something, some kind of a barrier between, you know, the parking lot and the Grand Canyon. I don't know why I thought that, but, you know, imaginations run wild, right? We got out of the car and the kids were like, whoa. And I've spent my entire life looking at pictures, as I'm sure all the rest of you as well. And you sort of build up, because you've seen the pictures, you sort of, oh, I've seen this before, right? Like, I've already seen this. But you're standing there in real life looking at the postcards or the Google images or whatever for real. Like, and it looks exactly like the pictures, like exactly. And so there's a part of you that's like, your brain can't compute to some extent. It's like this thing I've always just seen pictures of is now in front of me. And it really is like a giant hole in the ground, but it is absolutely beautiful. It was one of those things where it's even bigger in real life. Like, your mind imagines it from the pictures. Yeah, that's huge, right? But then when you're there standing at the precipice looking down, it's like massive. So we got out, we were walking around, the kids, oh my gosh, this is cool. We took pictures, all the things you do. Then there was a visitor center that we could, there was like a place to eat and obviously a gift shop and a museum and all those things. And so we spent, I think, about 2 hours total, at the Grand Canyon, walking around, looking at things, eating, it was a nice little pit stop for sure. But yeah, that's how we spontaneously ended up at the Grand Canyon. Was not planned. It's one of those things where I would love to go back, especially Flagstaff. It seemed like a really cool, cute little kitschy town to go to. Very mountain, side of the mountain kind of town that you see in like every Hallmark movie ever. It was really cute. So I would like to go back there someday, but I haven't made it yet, so we'll see. But yeah, so that's my adventure at the Grand Canyon on a road trip about 12 years ago. It's crazy. So yeah, we had a lot of fun. It's one of those things I'm really glad that my kids got to experience. And, I hope they all get to go back at some point themselves, as they get older. We've tried to foster an idea of travel and adventure in so much as they can and afford. That's also a big factor for a lot of us. But yeah, giving them these experiences in so much that they get to have that wanderlust and fulfill it to some extent. So here we've built up, a significant portion, and we're sort of inspecting our handiwork. We're like, all right, we're starting to make some progress. We're starting to get somewhere. But as I started evaluating it from the sky, I was like, it's still a little too skinny. It needs a little bit more here and there, but it was really starting to come together. So here I am, I think, working by myself one day, trying to lengthen what we already had a little bit more so that it would have some grandness to it, in so much in Dinkum that you can make. I wanted to really replicate the banding of the Grand Canyon, but that's not really possible given how the terraforming mechanics work. So we experimented with the red sand and the dark red dirt and the mud. And I think we talked about using sand, but it was such a stark contrast from the other three colors that it was like, yeah, we're going to have to eliminate that. But we used that to kind of differentiate the different sections. We can't replicate the banding of the Grand Canyon, so we decided to do it vertically a little. It didn't have quite the same effect, but you got to work with what you've got in the game, and that's what we did. I think it turned out well. Using the stone wand to create extra rocks here and there, and really create that sort of rocky feel that the Grand Canyon is like a big giant hunk of rock that's just had this river cut through it, which I know that's not the case, but we're going to use our imagination. So here I am just printing dirt endlessly. It was, I never want to print dirt again. Okay, that's not true. My next build is going to require it as well. But, when you're doing a natural build like this and it's just sort of random, my brain doesn't work great random. I like structure and order, and I do better with architectural builds. And these natural builds really tax my mental capacity sometimes because you want to make it look random and natural, but you're forcing the issue because you're creating it. Does that make sense? So yeah, I struggled with this because, I'm just randomly putting dirt down, as you can see here. I'm just like everywhere. Let's just spray dirt and build it up. So yeah, natural builds, not my thing. I really admire those people who can do them and they make them look so great and amazing. These are usually a huge challenge, but I still continue to do them because I want to get better at creating more natural type of areas on my island. Not everything can be a cityscape. So sometimes we do these things to challenge ourselves and also see how cool it can be in the end. But yeah, once we get to the end of this particular build, and those of you who've been to the Grand Canyon, you can let me know if it kind of, resembles that. I believe this video series will probably be in 3 parts. I tried to cut them down into digestible, I cannot talk today, digestible pieces, 20, 25-minute long videos, as that seems to be the sweet spot that everybody enjoys. And they're all self-contained. So this one is mostly the building of the Grand Canyon and the surrounding area. The other, I think part 2 will be the campgrounds, the national park campground area. And part 3 will be the ranger station, some rough camping, and the visitor center. So stay tuned for all of those, but you don't necessarily have to watch them in order, I suppose, if you don't want to. They're each one is self-contained, but they're all part of the series. So here we are, still dirt printing, guys. Oh my gosh. I'm telling you, the dirt printing sessions. That sounds like an album cover or an album name. I call dibs. Anyway, I think here in a little while, we start building Lake Havasu Falls. Now, I know when I visited the Grand Canyon, we were on the south rim. And Havasu Falls is not anywhere near there. But when I was looking at inspiration pictures, because I typically will either have pictures of my own in real life, or I go and look up pictures on Google, or sometimes I use both. And I remember seeing a picture for Lake Havasu Falls, which is part of the Grand Canyon area. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so pretty. I want to include that. I know it's not exactly in this area that I'm trying to recreate, but we're using our imaginations and it doesn't have to be exact. So there you go. There was a lot of grass seeding and a lot of tree planting, because it's, half forest, half desert, half rock. I cut a lot of this out just because, who wants to watch, 30 minutes of tree planting and seeding grass everywhere? But I did these little end caps on each of the canyon to sort of hide the abruptness of the end of it, because, we could only go so far, and eventually we will probably extend it and widen it. But for the purposes of these videos, this is about where we landed on the length and the size. And so, our decision to kind of graduate the ends down a little and add rocks and trees to kind of minimize the abrupt end of the canyon. And I think in real life, it kind of does that a little bit as well. So, kind of mixing real and imagination here. More grass planting and tree planting. If you like natural builds, this is going to be right up your alley. If you think that some of the things I've done in the past are complicated, and this is easy in the sense that you're not following anything specific. You can do what you want. And some people work way better under those confines where they can just decide and make it however. I do better following instructions or recipes or pictures and copying. When I played Minecraft, I would take a photo and replicate it there, or I would watch someone else's YouTube where they'd built something and then do the same thing. And yeah. Oh, look at that sunset. So here is the beginning of the build for Lake Havasu Falls. This kind of goes through several iterations. I was working on this by myself this particular day. I think I had jumped on during a lunch break and wanted to kind of see if I could do anything, make it how I saw in the picture. Initially, I just put water boxes in. As you see, I'm just preparing to make the space for the water boxes. And the more I looked at it after I did it, the less I liked it. The river was way over there, and I was like, do I really want to dig a trench? But sometimes you got to put in that extra work to really make it look good in the end. And not having different levels of water, if that makes any sense at all, it just made it look like this really shallow puddle, as you're about to see. So after debating, and going through all of this work, laying out all the pathing, putting down all the water boxes, I think we decided the next day after I talked to Sunny, this was not it. And we decided to deepen this particular area. I'm putting down the mushroom pathing because if you Google Lake Havasu Falls, the water is a very turquoise blue, most likely because of the minerals in the rock. We have a local watering hole called the Blue Hole, and it's on private property now, but it used to be an old quarry that was flooded, and the water is like the most turquoise blue imaginable. So I wanted to try to copy that here. And again, you know, the one square deep for the water pool at the bottom was just not cutting it. And of course, here we are, more grass, because the area around it was, yes, kind of rocky, but also I didn't want to keep this stark red. I wanted to mix the colors. And we go back in and put in rock and grass and trees, which I think you'll see later on. But that's where I'm kind of assessing, like, I don't think I like this. I was like, I'll get a second opinion, see what Sunny thinks when she comes over, and have her look at the picture and be like, should we leave it? Like, what do you think? As I've said before, I typically will waste the time to lay it all out and then realize I don't like it and then have another idea and do that instead. So best laid plans sometimes turn into something else. You'll see me kind of fly away and look back and stand there and observe. I need a perspective look to see what it's looking like, what's missing. Does it look too bare? Does it look plain? Does it look too much? And here I added some of the glow buttons because this area was just so dark at night and I wanted that slight ambient glow. So Sunny came over and we decided that maybe we should bring the falls over to the other side, the main canyon side. I don't believe that there is actually one where I was, but again, we're using our imaginations and doing what we want. So it broke up some of the textures on the canyon side, adding in this like a bit of water, and it just kind of, it was something different than red and orange dirt and rock and trees. The water element just kind of brought all the forces of nature together there. And I thought, because of where we are, having a rocky place that the water fell into was a good thing, a good call. So I'm down here adding tons of rock. Some vegetation here and there because we were going to leave it without trees, but it was just a lot of red and orange. And sometimes you just need to break those textures up. Here we are planting some river reed seed. I love the way this looks in water and out of water. It creates just a different grass texture than the regular grass and the spinifex. Again, mixing textures and colors really can add something to the space. I'm telling you, the grass and the tree planting was forever long. So, yep, we decided right about here, we needed to dig it out and make the pool area, the lake area, varying depths. It just did not look realistic. And I knew this, but, when you hear it from somebody else, you're like, okay, yep, I'm validated. I knew this was wrong, but someone else confirmed it. Let's do the work to make it better. And so I pull it all up like I do. And then Sunny went and busied herself with digging the trench to bring in the natural water from the river so that we could flood this area and not use water boxes and really make this area come alive a little bit more, as you'll see. So we decided on 3 depths, and I think it looks so much better. Now this is what's going to be really cool. Watch out, guys. Look at this. When the water comes in, look at that. I love it. That was so much fun to do that. We were like squealing, ah! it looks so great. It was just a fun little thing to do. So yeah, now we got to fill it back in. But it was worth it. It's totally worth doing all that extra work just to make that happen, because that area looks so much better now. As this build goes on, this area will get filled with more grass and trees. I'll probably leave that out of any other future episode, just because, yeah, how much of that do you really want to see? We were creating a little bit of a sandy area around the beach, not the beach, the lake, to kind of just break up some of the grass and the red and the rock, and just, again, more textures, different looks. Just give you different colors for your eye to sort of travel through and make it look a little less plain, I guess. We opted not to put anything, obviously, in the water, because if you look at pictures, it's pretty clear and doesn't really have any vegetation that I could see. Here we decided that we wanted to make the falls look like they were really pouring into the water, which we thought we were going to achieve here, and then realized it's not going to have the same effect that we were hoping. And we also wanted to build it to where the rock, where it looked like the water was coming straight out of the side of the mountain, out of the rock. Whereas before it was just sort of hanging there. So this area, we're okay, we did it this way. Nope, that didn't work. Let's redo it. So this is the working on what the final project here will end up looking like. You know, when you put the water boxes up the top and then you set them down, it kind of creates this overflow kind of look, like that. And we put it there, we took it down, we put it there, we took it down. In the end, I think we ended up not using it. I forget exactly why. Because the whole idea was to have that, you know, when water is gushing into a pool like that, it creates sort of like this bubbling effect. Just adding some rocks, you know. Our favorite pastime, next to planting trees. So here we are, kind of experiencing the canyon from the river. I did not take any of the tours down into the canyon, so I think that would have been fun, but we didn't have the time. This is what I imagine it might be like. A little bit. Maybe the water level is probably not so high, but... And no view of the Grand Canyon is complete without an aerial tour or an aerial view. This was a massive undertaking, and now looking at it finished, or mostly finished, for at least this section of it, I'm glad that we went through the effort. It looks really good for me. Maybe not perfect, but I can appreciate the work we put into it. So, well, this is probably going to wrap this one up, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for part 2, where we build the campground. And as always, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others. I'll catch you guys in the next one.